In the year 2247, space was no longer silent. Ships hummed between stars, colonies bloomed on distant moons, and Earth, once alone in its blue sky, now stood at the edge of a crowded galaxy. Humanity had fought its first real war among the stars just 2 years before. It had been short, brutal, and nearly ended everything. But Earth had survived. Barely. Now peace was on the table. The Galactic Concord arrived without warning. Their ships, sleek, silver, and shaped like folded wings, slid into orbit around Earth like ghosts. They did not fire. They did not threaten. They simply waited, and when Earth's defense grid locked onto them, the Concord sent a single message. We come to offer peace. The meeting took place on Unity Station, a ring-shaped outpost circling Earth at the edge of the atmosphere. Inside the main chamber, soft light glowed from the walls, and the air smelled faintly of ozone and recycled water. At the center of the room sat a long table made of polished lunar stone. On one side sat 5 alien delegates, tall, slender beings with smooth gray skin and eyes like polished obsidian. They did not blink. They did not fidget. They simply watched. On the other side sat Lena Hayes. She was not what the Concord expected. At 32, she wore a simple Navy uniform with no medals, no rank pins, just a small Earth emblem over her heart. Her dark hair was pulled back, her hands folded calmly in front of her. She had been chosen not for her title, but for her actions. During the Krell border conflict, she had walked alone into a ruined city on Epsilon 9, unarmed, to negotiate the release of 300 human prisoners. She had succeeded. The Concord had watched that moment closely. They thought her soft. They thought her easy to sway. The lead delegate, a being known only as HFY War, slid a data tablet across the table. On it shimmered the full text of the Galaxy Peace Treaty. It looked generous. It promised shared technology, clean energy, medical advances, faster-than-light travel upgrades. It offered Earth a voice in the Interstellar Council, protection from raiders and open trade lanes stretching from the Orion Arm to the Centauri Rim. Lena read it carefully. She scrolled slowly, her eyes moving line by line. The room stayed silent. Even the hum of the station's life support seemed to quiet down. Then she stopped. Buried deep in Article 14, subsection Gamma, was a clause that required Earth to surrender all independent military research. No new weapons, no defense projects without Concord approval. In Article 22, Earth would hand over control of its outer colonies, Mars, Titan, and the Ceres mining hubs, to a joint Concord Earth Oversight Board, which the Concord would dominate. And in the final annex, Earth's planetary government would be subject to harmonization reviews every 6 months, meaning the Concord could step in and override any law they deemed disruptive to galactic unity. It wasn't peace. It was surrender wrapped in silk. Lena looked up. Her voice was quiet, but it filled the room. "This isn't a treaty," she said. "It's a leash." HFY War tilted his head slightly. "Peace requires compromise, Commander Hayes. Your species is young, unstable. The Concord offers structure, safety, a place among the civilized." "Civilized?" Lena repeated. She pushed the tablet back across the table. "You call taking away our right to protect ourselves civilized? You call stripping our colonies of their voice civilized? We didn't fight a war just to become your obedient pets." A ripple passed through the alien delegates. One of them shifted in their seat. Another tapped a long finger against the table. They had never been spoken to this way. No species had ever refused the Concord's treaty. Most signed within hours, grateful for the protection, blind to the cost. "You misunderstand," Vor said, his tone still calm, but colder now. "Refusal is not an option. The alternative is isolation, sanctions, and if necessary, enforcement." Lena stood. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't glare. She just stood tall, her eyes steady. "Then let it be known," she said, "that Earth chooses freedom over false peace. We will not sign." She turned and walked out of the chamber. The door hissed shut behind her, leaving the Concord delegates in stunned silence. Outside, the station's observation deck stretched before her, a wide window showing Earth below, blue, green, swirling with clouds. Home. She placed a hand against the cool glass and took a slow breath. She knew what she had done. She had just turned down the most powerful alliance in the galaxy. She had risked war, trade collapse, maybe even extinction. But she also knew something deeper. Earth had spent centuries learning the hard way that freedom isn't given, it's defended. And if signing that treaty meant giving up the right to choose their own future, then no deal was worth it. Back on Earth, news of her refusal spread like wildfire. At first, panic flared. Markets dipped. Emergency broadcasts flashed on every screen. But then something unexpected happened. People didn't riot. They didn't blame her. Instead, they gathered. In New York, Tokyo, Nairobi, Buenos Aires, crowds filled the streets holding candles, flags, and handwritten signs. We stand with Lena. No peace without pride. Earth decides its own fate. President Daniel Ruiz watched the crowds from his office in Geneva. He had expected chaos. Instead, he saw unity. For the first time in decades, the world wasn't divided by borders or beliefs. They were united by one simple idea. They would not be owned. He picked up the secure comm line. "Get me Defense Command," he said, "and prepare a global address. We're backing her." Meanwhile, on Unity Station, Lena sat alone in her quarters. Her brother Kyle called from Oregon, his face pixelated on the screen. "You okay?" he asked, chewing on a piece of toast. Burnt as usual. "I'm fine," she said, managing a small smile. "You just told the whole galaxy to go jump," he said, grinning. "Kinda proud of you, sis," she laughed softly. "Don't get used to it. I'm still the one who sets off the smoke alarm boiling water." But even as she joked, her eyes drifted back to the window. Far in the distance, the Concorde ship still hung in space, unmoving. Watching. Waiting. She knew this wasn't over. The Concorde didn't forgive defiance. They erased it, but for now Earth had drawn a line. And Lena Hayes, quiet, stubborn, and utterly human, had been the one to hold the pen. After Lena Hayes walked out of the treaty chamber, the galaxy held its breath. On Unity Station, the Concorde delegates remained seated for a long time, unmoving as if frozen by disbelief. No species in recorded history had ever refused their peace offer. Most signed within hours, grateful for protection, blind to the fine print. But Earth, small, young, scarred by its own wars, had said no, and not quietly. Lena's words echoed through diplomatic channels, news feeds, and encrypted military comms across human space. Fear came first. On Mars, colonists rushed to secure food stores and seal dome hatches. In the asteroid belt, miners powered down drills and gathered in mess halls, whispering about conquered warships and orbital blockades. Stock markets on Luna and Earth plunged. Emergency alerts flashed on every public screen. Stay calm. Await official updates. But calm was hard to find when the most powerful alliance in the galaxy might decide you were no longer welcome in it. Yet something unexpected happened. Instead of panic turning to anger, at Lena, at Earth's leaders, at fate, the fear began to change. In cities across the planet, people gathered not in protest but in support. In Chicago, students held a silent vigil outside City Hall, holding signs that read, "We choose freedom." In Mumbai, factory workers paused their shifts to chant, "Earth stands tall." In Rio, musicians played old national anthems under the stars, their voices rising together in a song no one had sung in decades. Lena didn't see any of it at first. She stayed on Unity Station for 2 more days, debriefing with Earth Defense Command officers, answering questions, repeating her reasons. She spoke plainly. The treaty took away Earth's right to protect itself, to govern itself, to grow on its own terms. Peace isn't peace if you have to kneel to get it, she told them. When she finally returned to Earth, she expected to be pulled into meetings, press conferences, strategy sessions. Instead, President Daniel Ruiz met her at the spaceport in Geneva, with a small smile and a quiet order. "Go home, Lena. Rest. The world can wait a day." So she did. She took a shuttle to Oregon, where the air smelled of pine and salt, and the ocean crashed against black rocks just beyond her family's old wooden house. Her younger brother Kyle greeted her with burnt toast and a hug. "You're famous now," he said, grinning. "Old Mrs. Callahan down the road says you told those space bullies where to shove it." Lena laughed, but her eyes were tired. She sat on the porch that evening, wrapped in a thick sweater, watching the sunset paint the sky in red and gold. For the first time in months, she felt quiet. No alarms, no urgent comms, just wind, waves, and the distant cry of gulls. But peace never lasts long. 3 days later, President Ruiz addressed the world from the United Earth Assembly Chamber in Geneva. His voice was steady, his face calm but firm. Commander Hayes did not act alone, he said. She spoke for all of us. Earth will not trade its future for a false promise of safety. We stand by her decision. We stand by our freedom, the Assembly voted. Every single delegate, representing every nation, every colony, every voice on Earth and beyond, raised their hand in agreement. Unanimous. A moment so rare it hadn't happened since the Climate Accords of 2089. The message was clear. Earth was united. That unity rattled the Concorde. Their ships, still hovering near Neptune's orbit, began shifting positions. Scanners picked up increased energy signatures. Warships powered up their drives. It wasn't an attack yet, but it was a warning. A show of strength meant to frighten, but Earth didn't flinch. General Marcus Boone, head of Earth Defense Command, activated Plan Sentinel, a long-dormant strategy designed for worst-case scenarios. Defense satellites realigned, fighter squadrons rotated to high alert. Engineers on Mars and Titan began reinforcing shield grids and stockpiling supplies. It wasn't about starting a war. It was about showing they were ready to finish one if they had to. Meanwhile, public support for Lena only grew. Children drew pictures of her standing tall against giant alien ships. Poets wrote verses about her courage. Even old veterans, men and women who remembered Earth's darkest days, nodded in quiet respect. She's got spine, one retired pilot said on a news interview, and we need that now more than ever. But not everyone agreed. In the shadows, a new movement began to stir. They called themselves the Accord Movement, led by former Senator Eleanor Briggs, a sharp-tongued politician known for her calm logic and silver hair. They argued that Lena's pride had doomed humanity. "We are not ready for another war," Briggs said in a widely shared broadcast. "The conquered offers peace. Commander Hayes chose ego, and now we all pay the price." Her words found ears. In some cities, small protests formed. Not against the Concorde, but against Earth's own leadership. "Sign the treaty," their signs read. "Better safe than sorry." Online debates raged. Families argued at dinner tables. Friends unfriended each other over message boards. Lena heard about it, of course. She didn't respond publicly. She stayed in Oregon, walking the beach with Kyle, fixing the leaky roof, pretending for a little while that she was just a woman. Not a symbol, but symbols don't get to rest for long. One evening, a secure message arrived on her personal comm. It was from Jake Torres, a young intelligence officer stationed on Mars. He'd been tracking Concord signals and noticed something strange. Their fleet wasn't just preparing for war. They were sending encrypted messages to someone inside human space. Someone on Earth. Lena read the message twice. Then she packed a bag. The next morning, she boarded a shuttle back to Geneva. She didn't tell Kyle where she was going. She just hugged him and said, "I'll be back soon." At Defense Command headquarters, General Boone met her in a dimly lit briefing room. Maps of the solar system glowed on the walls. Red dots marked conquered positions. Blue dots showed Earth's defenses, and one blinking yellow dot hovered near the Titan relay station. "That's new," Boone said, pointing. "Signal origin unknown, but it's human-made. And it's talking to them." Lena frowned. "Someone's negotiating behind our backs." "Or worse," Boone said. "Someone's preparing to surrender without us." She looked at the map, at the fragile web of human settlements stretching from Earth to the edge of the system. They had stood together once. But unity is fragile, and fear makes people do desperate things. President Ruiz entered the room then, his face grim. "Eleanor Briggs filed a petition today," he said. "She's calling for a special session of the Assembly. She wants to override our decision and reopen talks with the Concorde." Lena didn't speak for a long moment. Then she said, "Then we show them why we said no in the first place." "How?" Boone asked. "By proving the Concorde doesn't want peace," she said. "They want control. And if we can show that to the world, really show it, no one will listen to Briggs anymore." Boone exchanged a look with Ruiz. It was risky, but they were out of safe choices. Later that night, Lena sat alone in her temporary quarters, staring at a photo on her desk. Her and Kyle as kids, building a sandcastle on this very beach. She missed that simplicity. But the galaxy wasn't simple anymore. Outside, the lights of Geneva twinkled below. Somewhere out there, people were scared, confused, angry, but also brave. And that gave her hope. The Concord thought Earth was weak because it was young. They didn't understand that youth also means fire, and sometimes fire is exactly what you need to burn away the chains. Tension grew like a storm building on the horizon. Earth's government stood firm behind Lena Hayes, but cracks began to show beneath the surface. The Accord movement, led by former Senator Eleanor Briggs, gained followers every day. Their message was simple. Survival mattered more than pride. "We cannot win a war against the conquered," Briggs said in a live broadcast from New Seattle. "Refusing peace is not courage, it's suicide." Her words found ears among the weary, the frightened, and those who remembered the last war's cost in blood and broken cities. Inside Earth's leadership, doubt whispered in quiet corners. Some assembly members met in secret, wondering if Briggs had a point. Could Earth really stand alone? General Marcus Boone saw the fear in their eyes during strategy briefings. He knew morale was as vital as missiles. If the people lost faith, no shield grid could save them. Lena felt the pressure too. She avoided public appearances, but her name was everywhere. On news streams, protest signs, even graffiti on old transit tunnels. To some, she was a hero. To others, a reckless idealist dragging humanity toward ruin. She stayed focused, working with President Ruiz and General Boone to find a path forward that didn't end in fire. Then came the message from Jake Torres. Jake was a sharp-eyed intelligence officer stationed on Mars, known for his knack for finding signals others missed. He had been monitoring Concord communications for weeks, sifting through noise and coded bursts. One night he found something strange. A repeating data pulse originating not from Concord ships but from inside human space. It was faint, masked as routine traffic, but its pattern matched Concord encryption protocols. Someone on Earth, or one of its colonies, was talking to the enemy. Lena read Jake's report in her temporary quarters at Defense Command. Her stomach tightened. Betrayal from within was more dangerous than any fleet. She requested an emergency meeting with Boone and Ruiz. In the dim briefing room, maps glowed on the walls. A yellow marker blinked near the Titan relay station, the main communications hub for the outer system. "That's where the signal's strongest," Jake's voice crackled over the comm. "And it's getting bolder. Last night it sent a full data packet. Who has access to that station?" Boone asked. "Only senior engineers and Accord movement sympathizers," Lena said quietly. She had studied Briggs's allies. Many held key posts in infrastructure and logistics. "They're not just talking," she added. "They're preparing to hand over control." Ruiz's face darkened. "If they seize Titan, they can cut off Mars, the Belt, even Luna from Earth's command. They could force a surrender by choking our own colonies." "We can't let that happen," Boone said. Lena leaned forward. "Then we stop them. But not with guns, not yet. If we storm Titan, it looks like Earth's tearing itself apart. The Conquered wins without firing a shot. So what do we do?" Ruiz asked. Lena paused. Then she spoke slowly, as if testing the idea herself. "We show the world what the Conquered really is. Not through speeches, but through proof. The kind even Briggs can't ignore." Boone frowned. "How?" "The Conquered isn't all one mind," Lena said. "During the Krell War, I heard rumors, whispers really, about species inside their alliance who didn't agree with their methods. One group, the Virel, were pushed out years ago for questioning orders. They're nomads now, hiding in the Oort cloud. If anyone has dirt on the Concord, it's them." Boone shook his head. "Reaching out to exiles? That's a long shot. And if the Conquered finds out, they'll call it an act of war." "Maybe," Lena said. "But if we do nothing, we lose either way." Ruiz studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Do it quietly. Use the Aurora. She's fast, stealthy, and off the main logs." The Aurora was a small frigate built for reconnaissance, not combat. Its hull absorbed radar, its engines ran near silent, perfect for slipping past Conquered patrols. 2 days later, Lena boarded the ship in a hidden dock beneath Luna's surface. Jake Torres met her there, his dark eyes alert, a duffel bag slung over his shoulder. "You sure about this?" he asked. "No," she admitted, "but it's the only play left." They launched at midnight Earth time, vanishing into the black between worlds. For 3 days they traveled in silence, avoiding known routes, killing all non-essential systems. Lena spent the hours reviewing old intel on the Virel, scant as it was. They were tall, pale-skinned, with long limbs and eyes that saw in infrared. They valued memory over power, stories over weapons. They had been erased from Conquered records, but their songs still drifted on dead frequencies. On the 4th day, Deep in the icy reaches beyond Neptune, the Aurora's sensors picked up a faint energy signature. Not a ship, a habitat, a cluster of old freighters welded together, drifting among comets. The Virel home. Lena sent a single message, coded in an old Krell dialect she'd learned during the war. "We come not to fight, but to listen." Hours passed. Then a reply. "Approach, alone." Lena suited up and took a shuttle. Jake stayed with the Aurora, ready to run if things went wrong. Inside the habitat, the air was cold and smelled of metal and dried herbs. A Virel waited, tall, wrapped in woven cloth, eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. His name was Kalen. They spoke through a translator, words slow and careful. Lena explained Earth's choice, the treaty, the threat. She didn't beg. She simply told the truth. Kalen listened. Then he said, "The Concord does not offer peace. It offers silence, and silence is the death of a people." He led her to a chamber lined with data crystals, thousands of them. "Our memories," he said. "Every lie the Concord told, every world they broke, every voice they erased. Among them was proof. Recordings of Concord leaders planning the slow takeover of weaker species. Documents showing how they manipulated wars to justify control. Logs of entire cultures being harmonized into nothing." Lena's hands trembled as she copied the files. "Why help us?" she asked. Kalen looked at her, his gaze steady. "Because you said no. And no is the first word of freedom." Back on the Aurora, Jake stared at the data. "This changes everything." "It will," Lena said, "if we can get it home." But as they turned toward Earth, alarms blared. A Concord patrol had spotted them. 3 sleek warships dropped out of warp, blocking their path. "We're not armed for this," Jake said, gripping the controls. Lena didn't panic. "Then we don't fight. We run." The Aurora dove into a nearby comet field, weaving through ice and rock. The Concord ships followed, but their size worked against them. One clipped a massive shard and spun off course. The others slowed, wary. They made it through. When Earth's defense grid hailed them, Lena sent one word. Proof. In Geneva, President Ruiz received the data. He watched the recordings late into the night. By dawn, he called an emergency broadcast, but before he could speak, news broke from Titan. Eleanor Briggs and her followers had moved. They'd taken control of the relay station's core systems. They were preparing to transmit a surrender message to the Conquered, one that claimed to speak for all of Earth. Lena knew then that time was up. The truth wasn't enough. They had to act, and fast. The moment the news broke that Eleanor Briggs and her followers had seized the Titan relay station, Earth held its breath. Titan was not just a hub for signals, it was the nerve center connecting every human outpost beyond Earth. If Briggs sent her surrender message through it, the Conquered would accept it as official. Colonies on Mars, Ceres, and Europa might be forced to stand down, thinking Earth had changed its mind. Chaos would follow. Civil war might even begin. President Daniel Ruiz acted fast. He declared Briggs's group in open rebellion and ordered Earth Defense Command to retake the station, but without bloodshed if possible. "We cannot let fear split us," he said in a short, urgent address. "Not now." General Marcus Boone turned to the one person who understood both the stakes and the shadows, Jake Torres. Jake had grown up in the Belt, knew Titan's layout like the back of his hand, and had friends among the station's engineers, friends who might still be loyal. He assembled a small team of 6, all volunteers, all trained in stealth and systems override. Their mission: slip onto Titan, disable the broadcast array, and secure the command core before Briggs could transmit. Lena Hayes wanted to go with them. She argued that her presence might convince Briggs to stand down, but Boone refused. "You're too valuable on Earth," he said. "If this goes wrong, we'll need your voice to hold the people together." So Lena stayed in Geneva, watching the mission unfold on a secure feed. Her hands were clenched, her jaw tight. She hated waiting. Meanwhile, Jake's team launched from a hidden dock near Saturn's rings. They rode a cargo hauler painted with fake mining logos, blending in with regular traffic. Titan's outer sensors scanned them, found nothing unusual, and let them dock at Bay 7, the least monitored entrance. Inside, the station hummed with tension. Lights flickered in the corridors. Security drones patrolled more often than usual. Briggs had locked down non-essential sectors, but she hadn't shut down life support or comms. She needed the station functional to send her message. Jake moved like a ghost. He wore a maintenance uniform, his face hidden under a visor. His team split up, 2 headed for the power junctions, 2 for the security hub, and he and a young engineer named Rena Chen went straight for the central broadcast chamber. They found it guarded by 4 armed civilians, Briggs supporters, not soldiers. Jake didn't fight. He used an old trick from belt bar brawls. He triggered a false fire alarm in the next corridor. The guards rushed to check it. In that moment, he and Rena slipped inside. The broadcast console glowed red, armed and ready. Briggs stood before it, her silver hair pulled back, her voice calm as she rehearsed her message. To the Galactic Concord, she began, the people of Earth. Jake stepped forward. You don't speak for us, Senator. Briggs turned, startled. Then she smiled sadly. Jake Torres, I knew you'd come. But you're too late. The Concord is listening. They're waiting for our signal. They're not listening to traitors, Rena said, her fingers flying over a side panel. They're listening to Earth, and Earth said no. Before Briggs could react, Rena triggered a hard reboot. The console blinked off. Emergency protocols locked the system down for 10 minutes, time enough to cut the main uplink. Briggs lunged for a backup terminal, but Jake blocked her. It's over, he said. The proof is already on its way to every newsfeed, every colony, every home. The Concord lied, and you almost helped them bury the truth. Outside, the rest of the team had done their part. Power rerouted, security drones disabled. Reinforcements from Earth defense were minutes away. Briggs slumped, not in defeat, but in sorrow. I only wanted to save lives, she whispered. Freedom saves lives too, Jake replied. Back on Earth, President Ruiz went live before the Concord could react. He didn't speak alone. Beside him stood Lena Hayes, General Boone, and leaders from Mars, the Belt, and Luna. On the screen behind them played the Virel evidence, recordings of Concord officials planning the slow erasure of entire species, calling it harmonization. The truth was raw, undeniable. Across human space, people watched in silence. In homes, in factories, in domes on distant worlds, they saw what the Concord really was. Not peacekeepers, but conquerors who wore peace like a mask. The Accord movement collapsed overnight. Supporters abandoned Briggs. Protest turned into vigils for truth. Even former doubters now understood. Signing that treaty would have ended Earth not with a bang, but with a whisper. But the real shock came from beyond human space. Within hours of the broadcast, a small ship from the Virel arrived at Unity Station, not to fight, but to stand with Earth. Then came a message from the Krell, the very species Earth had fought 2 years before. We watched, their leader said. You refused the leash. So do we. They announced their withdrawal from the Concord. Then another species followed, and another. 5 in total broke away in less than a week. The Concord, built on fear and control, began to crack from within. Lena watched the reports from her office in Geneva. She felt no triumph, only relief and a deep, quiet sadness for all the worlds that had suffered in silence. Jake returned to Earth a hero, though he refused the title. I just flipped a switch, he said. But everyone knew it was more than that. He had helped protect Earth's choice. President Ruiz called a global meeting of all human settlements. For the first time, Mars and the Belt were given equal voice. We are not just Earth, he declared. We are humanity, and we choose our path together. Lena stood at the window again, looking out at the city lights below. Kyle called from Oregon. You did it, he said. No, she replied softly. We all did. Far above, in the silent dark, the Concord fleet still waited near Neptune. But they no longer looked like judges. They looked like relics, powerful, yes, but brittle. And for the first time they seemed afraid. Because Earth had done something no one expected. It had not just defended itself. It had given others the courage to say no too. The Concord gave Earth 72 hours. Their message came cold and clear, broadcast on every open channel. Sign the treaty as written or face corrective intervention. No threats, no shouting, just quiet certainty. They believed Earth would break. They believed fear would win. After all, no one had ever stood against them and lived free. But Earth did not panic. This time there were no riots, no frantic stock sales, no whispers of surrender. People gathered in town squares, in colony domes, in ship mess halls, and they waited, not in fear but in quiet resolve. They had seen the truth now. They knew what the conquered really wanted. And they had chosen. President Daniel Ruiz called Lena Hayes to his office the morning the ultimatum arrived. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, painting golden lines across the floor. He didn't ask if she was ready. He simply said, "It's time to speak for all of us." That evening, Earth's message went out, not just to the Concorde, but to every world, every ship, every listening ear in human space and beyond. It was broadcast in every language, on every frequency. At its center stood Lena Hayes, not in uniform but in a simple dark coat, her hair loose, her eyes steady. Beside her stood President Ruiz, General Marcus Boone, Jake Torres, leaders from Mars and the Belt, even former doubters who now stood firm. Lena spoke first. Her voice was calm, clear, and carried the weight of 1 billion souls. "We do not seek war," she said, "but we will not be erased. If peace means kneeling, then we choose to stand even alone." Then others spoke. A miner from Ceres talked about building life in the void with bare hands. A teacher from Nairobi spoke of children who deserve to dream without borders. A veteran from the HFY War said, "We've bled for this freedom. We won't hand it away." The message ended not with a threat, but with an open hand. "To any who have suffered under the Concorde's rule," Lena said, "know this, you are not alone. And silence is not your only choice." The response was faster than anyone expected. Within hours, the Varel sent a public declaration of solidarity, their ancient songs echoing across the comms. Then the Krell, once enemies of Earth, announced they were cutting all ties with the Concorde. 2 more species followed the next day, then 3 more after that. Each one shared their own stories of control, of lost voices, of cultures flattened under the weight of unity. The galaxy, long silent, began to whisper back. The Concorde's perfect order started to crumble. Their fleet near Neptune grew restless. Reports came in of unrest on their own ships, crews questioning orders, officers refusing commands. The alliance that had ruled for centuries was built on fear, and fear cannot hold when hope begins to spread. On the final day of the ultimatum, the Conquered made their move. Their warships powered up, weapons charged, engines humming with deadly intent. Earth's defense grid lit up red. Fighters launched from Luna, Mars, and hidden docks in the asteroid belt. Civilians moved to shelters, not in panic but in quiet readiness. Everyone knew what might come, but the Concorde never fired. Instead, their lead ship sent a single message. "Stand down. The treaty remains open," President Ruiz replied immediately. "The answer is still no." Silence followed. Then slowly the Concorde fleet turned. One by one, their ships powered down their weapons and began to withdraw. They did not explain. They did not threaten. They simply left, vanishing into the dark like shadows at dawn. No one cheered at first. They waited, unsure if it was a trick. But as hours passed and no attack came, a quiet joy spread across Earth and its colonies. Not the wild joy of victory, but the deep relief of survival and the pride of having held the line. In the days that followed, the galaxy changed. New alliances formed, not built on control but on choice. The Virel, the Krell, and the other breakaway species began talking with Earth about a new kind of council, one where every voice mattered, where peace meant partnership, not obedience. It would take time. Trust was fragile. But for the first time, the future felt open. Lena Hayes returned to Oregon. This time she stayed. She walked the beach with her brother Kyle, fixed the old porch swing, and even managed to boil water without setting off the smoke alarm. Reporters called. Leaders asked for meetings, but she said no to most of it. "I did what anyone would have done," she told Kyle one evening as they watched the sunset. "I just said what needed saying, but the world knew better." Children wrote her letters. Old soldiers saluted her name. On Mars, a new school was named after her, not for refusing the treaty, but for reminding humanity that freedom is worth defending. President Ruiz visited her one quiet afternoon. He didn't come with guards or cameras, just a man in a simple coat carrying 2 mugs of coffee. They sat on the porch watching the waves. "You changed everything," he said. "No," Lena replied. "We all did." "I just spoke first," he nodded. Then he handed her a small data chip. "The Virel sent this. It's a song. They say it's for you." She took it, her fingers brushing the cool metal. She didn't play it then. She kept it in her pocket, a quiet promise from the stars. Far above, Earth ships still patrolled the edges of human space, but they no longer looked out in fear. They watched with hope. Because the galaxy had learned something new, that peace is not the absence of conflict but the presence of choice. And Earth, small and stubborn and full of fire, had reminded everyone what that meant. Lena sipped her coffee, the ocean breeze in her hair, and for the first time in a long while, she felt at peace. Not because the danger was gone, but because she knew, no matter what came next, humanity would face it standing tall.